Good evening, my name is Steve Seibert. I'm with the Collins Center staff in our Tallahassee office. I have a very cool title of being the Director of Strategic Visioning, which is just great, and we can ponder the universe later. That's what we do. We are very honored that you have taken your time, all of you have taken your time out of your busy schedules, away from your families in many cases, to join us tonight in this celebration. And it's a celebration honoring one of our own who has received statewide recognition. And I like the piano, it looks nice. Is that Bartel? Is Jeff playing somewhere? It is a celebration honoring one of our own. It is a celebration recognizing the incredible generosity of one of our trusted friends. And as always, whenever the Collins Center family gets together, we are always recommitting ourselves to the honor and the legacy of Governor Leroy Collins. It's what we do. We have a number of Board of Trustees members here tonight. I'm going to name them quickly, but it's a tremendous outpouring of support from them. We've got some that, we have one that came down from Tallahassee to attend this gathering, but let me just name them. Our Board of Trustees that are here tonight include Manny Diaz, Parker Thompson, Kathy Baughton-McLeod, Roy Collins III, Jeff Bartel, Charlie Zwick, and Andy Rosenkrantz. So would you please say hi to them? That is quite a board of directors. And there are many more that aren't here, but who will join us later. For 20 years, the working spirit of this organization has been Rod Petrie. He has led the state of Florida to think about things like justice reform, education issues, elections reform, citizen engagement, dispute resolution from life insurance to mortgage foreclosures, constitutional issues, neighborhood revitalization, and probably a dozen other major challenges that Florida's been facing for a long time. He is a legal icon. He is a management guru. He's probably the best read person I know. He served this country in Korea and Vietnam as a Green Beret, by the way. For many of us, he is our hero. Somebody just a minute ago said, he's not our governor, but I wish he were. And this last year, in January, he was named by Florida Trend Magazine as the Floridian of the Year.
And well, Justice Cantero, I may be one of the few people who can say Justice of the Florida Supreme Court clerk for me, right? Thank you. And you know this man, Steve, has been our Secretary of the Department of Community Affairs for the state of Florida in Jeb Bush's cabinet. What a wonderful contribution he made, and an elected commissioner from the county of Pinellas, based in Largo, I think, Steve. Thank you so much, Steve, for your public service over the years. And we're very happy to have you tonight. We're here to celebrate the Collins Center for Public Policy and its legacy of leadership. We're going to hear a little bit more about the legacy that derives from Governor Leroy Collins, from the governor's grandson, Leroy Collins III, who's with us. And his daughter, Darby, is here. Darby, would you please? Yes, there is Darby. The younger daughter of Governor Leroy Collins and Mary Paul Collins, and I remember the governor telling this story. I used to write speeches for them, and he told this wonderful story about being at the governor's mansion. And here, Mrs. Collins, who was just a beautiful woman, coming down the grand staircase in this beautiful gown, looking so beautiful. And the governor in his black tie, looking at he's a very handsome man. And Darby, I think at the time, 6 years old, standing at the foot of the stairs and saying, "Oh, Mommy, you look so beautiful." And then she realizes her father's expecting something, right? And she says, "And Daddy, you look so clean." So thank you, Darby, for being honest. The Collins Center is a statewide think tank with muddy boots. We like that label. We do think tanky things. We do studies, we do surveys, we do analyses, reports, but we do much, much more. We try hard to turn what we learn through those studies and analyses into concrete actions, concrete results that benefit real people every day. We get our boots very muddy in the process as we slog through what happens every day. As an example, over 18 years ago, after Hurricane Andrew hit South Florida so hard, we staffed an official state academic task force on hurricane catastrophe insurance. The state was in trouble. Private companies were leaving in droves. We needed to do things that would encourage the private companies to stay, stabilize the market, provide people the kind of insurance they needed. So we studied and analyzed with this academic task force, including the presidents of all the big universities, and we determined what could work. And that was a wonderful report. It's beautiful. Read it. But we did more than that. We then took to turning that report into reality through legislative action, executive action, and so forth. And we helped the state change its system for regulating insurance companies and providing hurricane catastrophe insurance to every home. A little more than 10 years ago, former Governor Jeb Bush called us right before Christmas. He said, "Help, we've had this election and we've got these butterfly ballots in Palm Beach County and things are in turmoil and people are really suspecting the integrity of the election process. I want my brother to win, but listen, I'm the governor. I've got to ensure that there is a legitimate, well-respected election process in our state. So I'm asking you, the Collins Center, the only independent, nonpartisan those are his words, organization in our state whom people will trust, to help me look at the election system in our state and come up with something that works that people will trust." We convened over a couple-month period a bipartisan task force, 10 Democrats, 10 Republicans, 1 independent. It's bipartisan, right? And one of the members, by the way, was young Marco Rubio. And we came up with a wonderful 78-page, 36 recommendation task report. But the report fell on deaf ears at the legislature. These are people remaining interested in getting reelected. They didn't quite want to change the system, right? So we commissioned a poll with another group, the James Madison Institute, that found the people of Florida over 90% in favor of these recommendations and over 90% in favor of doing something now, not in the future. Within 2 weeks, we had legislative approval, unanimous approval from the House, and 39-1, I think it was, in the Senate. Astounding change because of the muddy boots actions that we took. And we worked with the governor, the Secretary of State, the legislature for years thereafter to make sure that the election system was changed. It still needs changes and reform, but major things were done then. And then after abstractly studying for a while dispute resolution systems and how we could make things work better, we decided that we could help people turn thought into action. Former Insurance Commissioner Bill Nelson, now U.S. Senator Bill Nelson, called on us to set up a system for mediating life insurance disputes in the 1990s. We did over 20,000 of those. Then after the 04-05 hurricanes in our state, the Department of Financial Regulation asked us to administer a program of mediation for hurricane insurance disputes. We did over 30,000 of those. And most recently, we've been called on, because we worked really hard at it, by the judges in the state, by the Supreme Court of the state, and now by a large financing agency, Fannie Mae, I'll give the name, who is determined that we can help with residential homeowner foreclosure. And totally, we have now done over 73,000 cases in both our programs. And these are helping people every day get their resolutions resolved. And we've worked very hard over the years in a concept of restorative justice. How do we make sure, how do we encourage young people to be treated in ways in their schools, in the juvenile and adult systems that benefit them, that benefit all of us, by making sure that when they get into a little bit of trouble, it doesn't turn into a lifelong sentence. In healthcare, community health workers, in justice with ex-offender reentry programs, in conserving resources, in trying to achieve a more sustainable Florida, and all kinds of programs, the Collins Center has been and will continue to be at the cutting edge of change. We've now launched a new program called Our Florida, Our Future. It's about where we're going, where we've been, where we now are, and where we can go if we make the right choices for the future. And we want to do that with an extensive system of citizen engagement so that all of our residents and all of our citizens have an opportunity to say what their future is going to be and to make it happen. This program was first envisioned, was mentored, was encouraged by Mr. Charles Zwick. Mr. Zwick is our founding chair. In 1988, he helped found the Collins Center for Public Policy that had as its first director former senator at that time, Lawton Chiles, future governor. He's with us tonight, as well as his lovely wife, Barbara. We're really happy to have them with us. Charlie was the founding chair. He served as our chairman until 1994 when Ruben Askew succeeded him. Years of wise leadership and wise guidance. He kept active with us ever since, and he's recently announced that he's donating $1 million to us to help turn this Our Florida, Our Future project into reality. We, of course, think that Charlie's extremely wise in that decision, and we want to honor his commitment and his trust in us. We're very grateful to him for his confidence. Charlie is the retired chair of Southeast Banking Corporation. You may remember that was the largest banking corporation in the state at the time, and it exercised great leadership in many areas. He was on the staff and board of the RAND Corporation in California for 27 years. A man of great intellect and accomplishment. An economist, he served as President Johnson's budget director of the Office of Management and Budget. I think that was the last time we had a balanced budget. And Leroy Collins was up there too as Undersecretary of Commerce. He also served under presidents, participating in various studies with President Carter, President Johnson, and President Kennedy. Charlie was raised on a farm in Plantsville, Connecticut. Isn't that a great name for a farm community? Plantsville. And he got his undergraduate and master's degrees from the University of Connecticut, to which he is ever grateful, and also has made a substantial gift to make sure that they continue the kind of legacy that they have engendered through Charlie's way. He got his PhD from Harvard. He served in the United States Army in Japan after World War II, and has just been an inspiration of leadership for us all. We're very happy to have Charlie Zwick with us tonight. Charlie Zwick, you come up. Thank you.
Where we are today, I was delighted to be able to continue to work with the foundation. First talk a little bit about my personal experience with the Collins Center, and then at the end I want to talk a little bit about Our Florida, Our Future, which is going to be headed by my gentleman on the left here, Steve Siebert, and I think it's something that I would encourage all of you to participate in one of many different ways to do that. First, let me just, for the old timers in the room, and there are some of them that I run into, I came in 1969. When the administrations changed in Washington, I came down as president of Southeast Bank. Shortly after I arrived here, I ran into a sort of an autonomous group that was wandering around thinking about we need some sort of an independent think tank organization. And these people, and I'll forget probably the most important ones, but these people included from Tallahassee, Steve Ufuller, Charlie Reed, who was Chief of Staff, to Bob Graham, Sandy Dallenberg and John Edward Smith were with the Steele, Hector and Davis Law Firm, which happened to be Southeast Law Firm. And so and with my relationship to the Rand Corporation, I sort of got dragged into it. There were a half a dozen people who had this vague idea that we ought to create this. They also had a name for it. And the name for it was going to be the Collins Center. So we had a name and a concept, and we sort of drifted around for a number of years talking about who, when, and how. One day we woke up and read in the newspapers that Senator Lawton Chiles decided he was no longer going to run for office, and he would step down at the end of his term and retire to Tallahassee. We all looked at ourselves and said, there's our executive director. And off we went and recruited Lawton Chiles to be the first executive director of the Collins Center. During this period, a lot of this stuff took place in the house of a fellow named Chesterfield Smith. A few of you have heard of. And somehow or other, Chesterfield and I became the elders to the younger crew that were putting this thing together. But all of a sudden, Lawton Chiles was available. We created the Collins Center. I was chairman of it for 5, 7 years, whatever. In the beginning, I was chairman. I remember going to Governor Martinez and saying, Lawton assures me he'll never run for office again. He's given up politics, not to worry. And this is a nonpartisan group. Well, guess what? A few years later, Lawton had second thoughts and he ran for governor. And that was great from one perspective, but from another perspective, it put me in a strange position. And I remember going over to see Governor Martinez and saying, look, I didn't expect this to happen, which means I'm not very smart, but I didn't. I didn't mislead you. So that happened. We moved around very quickly when that happened, and we hired as an executive director after Lawton, a fellow named Steve McNamara, who was at the law school in Tallahassee and has been involved in various and sundry positions throughout the state. As you probably know, I guess it was last week, he was appointed Chief of Staff to Governor Scott. So our number 2 executive director is now Chief of Staff to the current governor. We invited him. He sent us a nice note back saying he would love to be here, wishing us the best, but he was up to his ears in transition problems, as you can imagine. So after that, the 3rd executive director was a fellow who has now been executive director for how long? 20 years. So we've had a long tour with the man who's done more than anybody else to this thing. In terms of chairman, after I stepped down as chairman, Governor Askew took the position, and then after that, Jim Apthorpe did it for a year, but then Tom Rumberger took it, and now Parker Thompson, who's somewhere around here, is chairman. So we've had more chairmen than we've had executive directors, which says they're more fragile, I guess, than the executive director. But in any event, this has been a very successful, and I believe, I would just leave this first comment, that creating an institution that has the respect of the community, and I think we do have the respect of the community, as a nonpartisan organization trying to do things for the good of the state of Florida, and in particular the dirty boots part of it really came from Rod, who thought, besides just saying nice things, we ought to be close enough to the action to implement some of these things. So I think we all ought to be respectful of the job that has been done over the last 20 years in creating an institution that has the respect of the large majority of the people in the state of Florida is really quite an accomplishment. Now let me move quickly, or my 5 minutes are going to go away on me, to the concept of our Florida, our future. For years I have been arguing that this is a great state and we're underplaying our hand. The 2010 census has now been completed. The interesting details will be coming out over the next year or two, but it's clear that we are now fourth largest state in the union. New York didn't fall behind us because of the recession. We had our people, in-migration slowed down and the out-migration from New York slowed down, and so New York is slightly bigger. But it's clear in 10 years we'll be the largest, third largest state, and if you don't think we're politically important, you haven't been reading the newspapers, and if I read it right, the Republican National Committee is going to meet in Tampa next year, and the latest Republican candidate for president is named Orlando as his headquarters, and I see a president and vice president, and wives of presidents and vice presidents wandering through here. So the state of Florida is in a unique position, and we ought to capitalize on it. And that means we ought to think a little more about who we are, how we got here, and the census data. And Tony Carmela, who's working on that, will have some very interesting things over the next 6-12 months to give you on what's happening, who we are, and how different we are than we were 10, 20 years ago. And for those of you who are not politicians, I think the politicians in the room understand that Central Florida is becoming the key part of the state of Florida. And the projections now show that by 2020, Central Florida will be bigger than South Florida, and North Florida will be a fairly small part of the total. We need to do a lot of work. As some of you will remember, I chaired a committee for Governor Graham on the State Comprehensive Plan. That was a very good report. The problem was that nobody knew what it said, and we didn't do a good job of selling it. So what we have come around to now is to say, look, we've got to talk to the people. One of the great quotes of Governor Collins is, I won't get this exactly right, but leadership, great leadership does not come to the people, it comes from the people. We need to think about it when we have high-level committees making all sorts of recommendations which the people don't understand. And so what we're doing in this Our Florida, Our Future is trying to flip that around, and Steve and his troops have guaranteed me they're going to talk to 4 million Floridians over the next 5 years and try to see if we can explain what's happening to the state and what the options are and what we might have to do if we want to do option 1, 2, or 3. And I think if you really want to make progress in this state, that's where we got to start. And we've got to start with, this is my home. Most of us are immigrants. We've got to believe now that Florida is my home, my future is in Florida, and what do we got to do to make that happen? And I think that what we're going to try to do over the next 5 years, I've given them to the 1914 election, because I don't think the 2014 election for governor, where I would hope we can show some progress in the quality of the dialogue, the issues, how they're discussed, and how we make progress in the state of Florida. You should join in. You can join in with the obvious ways of giving money. You can join in because they're going to need a lot of facilitators. If they're going to talk to 4 million Floridians, they're going to need a lot of local people to run sessions. Or you can join in simply by periodically sitting back and thinking, this is my home. What about my future? And what about the state of Florida? Thank you very much.
My grandfather was from Tallahassee, and while he lived most of his life in North Florida, he also lived in Miami for a brief period and always looked forward to spending time in this part of the state. He fished off these waters, preferring this pastime because it was just 2 people in a boat, where you could really get to know the other person and talk to them. Some of his frequent fishing partners included personal friends and political allies, John Pennekamp and Bill Baggs. He enjoyed Stipsville and attended many governors' conferences at the Americana and Fontainebleau hotels. He never forgot that it was the voters here who helped him carry only Dade and Broward counties during his U.S. Senate campaign in 1968, especially when he lost his home county in Tallahassee. The Miami area understood and appreciated that his legislative reapportionment efforts helped bolster the political power of Miami and other diverse, progressive, growing areas in South Florida, all of which were underrepresented in the legislature under what some historians would later call rule-misrule, where low to moderate populated areas in North Florida and Tallahassee controlled the legislative process. Challenging reapportionment took personal conviction and moral courage, particularly when you consider he was from North Florida. But those were the character traits that defined his leadership. He once said, "I don't have to be reelected, but I do have to live myself." My Aunt Darby Collins, who has lived here most of her life, likens him to Picasso because he wasn't afraid to break the mold and the common held belief of the times. This translated into his social life as well. Just this morning I came across an article from the Miami News with a photo of my grandfather at a ball here hosted by legendary Pearl Mesta, one of the most venerable hostesses of her era, or so I'm told. Instead of doing the twist or dance on the dance floor or holding a cocktail in his hand while he's doing this, my grandfather sat at a table reading a newspaper. That was his style, and there's a picture of it, truly. Always focused on the issues at hand. Governor Collins had a vision and a sense of purpose for tackling the problems that faced him, from racial segregation to education, funding, and the environment, all of which are still relevant more than 40 years later. That legacy is what brings us here today. My grandfather recognized the need to have a nonprofit, nonpartisan, public policy organization like the Collins Center that could look beyond the geography and the demographics and the politics to consider what was best for all Floridians. Under the leadership of Rod Petrie and all the many other trustees who have dedicated their time and talent over the years, my late father and Aunt Jane R.L. included, the Collins Center has strived to uphold the principles maintained by Governor Collins with one goal in mind: to make the state a better place for every Floridian. In his inaugural address, he said, "Government cannot live by taxes alone, or by jobs alone, or even by roads alone. Government must have qualities of the Spirit. Without these qualities, there is no worthwhile leadership, and we grapple and grope in a moral wilderness." My grandfather would be proud of the important issues Rod and his team have addressed over the past 20 years, some of which include voter education, election reform, sustainability, clean water, criminal justice, the impact of offshore energy exploration, and minimizing home foreclosures, among many others. On behalf of the board and the Collins family, we appreciate and are especially grateful to Mr. Zwick for his very generous donation to help further the work of the Collins Center to future generations. Today is just the beginning of the Collins Center's next chapter, and I am proud you are a part of it. Thank you for coming.
So thank you all very much for coming tonight. Our sponsors include Manny Diaz, Peter and Karen Vermont, the BAC Florida Bank, Osley and McMullen Law Firm, Florida Power and Light, and Associated Industries of Florida. There are stickers to validate your parking, so don't all rush up here at once. We especially want to thank Charlie for his generous contribution. Some of you have also been very, very generous, and we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. There are perhaps some of you that would feel this need to donate $1 million, and we would be delighted if you would do that. I mentioned the Sergeant Major earlier. John Nannis is up there, and we make it a habit within our office, he's our development director, of making John happy. So please feel free to talk to him about what you might want to do for us. Seriously, I think that what we try to do, no one else does it. We have often said, if the Collins Center doesn't do it, nobody else will. So we thank you very much for spending your time with us tonight. Please be safe out there. Thank you very much.